Okay, great. We're all going. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to this first event in our RCA Service Design Reset Show 2022. And our first event today on Reset Spaces. I'll be giving an introduction to the course, to service design and setting up the day's events as we go through a number of our major themes of this year's show. So we'll wait a couple of minutes while people join and get on board. I apologize for the lack of music. You just have my voice instead. And we'll give it just a few more seconds and then we'll set off on our show and explain what's going to happen over the next 3 sessions today. This event is being run online, but it is part of a physical show here at the Kensington campus, of which we have 2 now, of course, with our new campus in Battersea. And you are very welcome today and tomorrow to get down to the show if you're anywhere near. We're open late tonight and tomorrow until, well, last entry is meant to be about 8 o'clock, check out at 9, but I'm sure we'll sneak you in if you get here a bit later. But you're very, very welcome to come and see the 43 projects we have on show across 73 students at the Reset Show. My first show, I'm delighted to say, having been head of program here for 3 years, or nearly 3 years. I had 1 whip show back in 2020, I guess it was. And then for the rest of the time, of course, we've been online. We've had 2 incredibly successful graduation shows. But it's wonderful to have all the students physically showing their work again on the Kensington campus at the moment, late night tonight and tomorrow. And that will be the end of the show. So just a short one this year. We were running over the weekend. So let me push on and start the events. Welcome to all the people who are on Zoom. Welcome to anybody watching live or recorded on the YouTube live stream. We have Service Design TV, we call it, the RCA Service Design on YouTube channel. And welcome to the Reset Show. Now, last night we kicked off the show, and you can see a recording of that on the YouTube channel as well, with a fabulous seminar with Hannah Copps from Transport for London, and also a tutor and guest speaker on the course from Dr. Luke Roberts, talking about system thinking and the complexity of resetting, and also a guest speaker on the course, and Lou Down, a great friend of the course, and an inspirational speech she gave us last night on the reality of service design and trying to reset the complexity of life around us. But that is indeed what we're trying to do here on this course and through this show. So by way of introduction again to what we do here and why we do it, let me speak for 10 minutes or so to reconnect you with what service design is and how we believe and why we believe it is so important. The truth is that services don't always work. And I only need to show you the UK track and trace system. Many, many billions, I think at the last count, £36 billion spent on leaders, technologies, and not spent on the actual design of that service, a service that had to connect with real people to tell them something very important, that they needed to shelter, that they needed to confine themselves because they had been in contact with somebody. This service did not consider how they were going to receive that information. It didn't consider the people who were delivering that service. This was such an important thing, and it was not designed, and therefore almost entirely failed until about halfway through its life. They tried to hire every service designer they could, by which time it was mostly too late. And let's look at the Ukrainian refugee visa service, just appallingly designed, not really designed at all. People are meant to find refugees on social media. I mean, it's such an appalling way. We need to design these services, not make spur of the moment decisions based on whatever reasons they're made. The services we are delivering, especially in a crisis, are poorly designed, if designed at all. And that's why we're here, that services do not work. And the processes we think work fine on a PowerPoint slide don't work. When we experience processes, we find that we have insurmountable barriers. We find things we can't get through. That's why we need to understand the reality of processes that are put in place for good reason, but with poor impact, damaging impact. We do not collaborate well enough together across the different disciplines, the skills, the organizational culture of an organization. We need to learn how to do that. And that's what we do on service design. We create leaders from within. We create facilitators of conversations, difficult conversations, to help us make better decisions that are about people, because it is about people. It's the people we are designing for, who are young or old or trying to work while clutching their kids, who have ambition, entrepreneurial spirit, or work in teams to deliver services, who get up every morning with passion and hope in their hearts. We need to think about all of those people when we are designing our services. And our great friend technology, that empowers us to do so much, also insists on solving problems we don't have, whether it's a need that doesn't exist, whether it's the implication of social intercourse because of somebody's wearing glasses whilst I'm talking to them, no thank you, whether it's looking after the ethics of our digital data footprint and whether that is truly private or not. And now, why? Why are we doing this? Does anybody know why? On a hope and a prayer, something called the metaverse will bring value, and maybe it will. But we launch into these incredibly expensive explorations without understanding the need. This is what service design is about, helping technologies solve problems we do have, rather than ones that they have no idea whether we have or not. So service design at the RCA has always been about these three things. And here we are celebrating our 10th anniversary of combining these facets of how we make decisions and create better services and experiences. We are still concerned with the humans. We are still human-centric because we are concerned with the way we make decisions, the people that make decisions. We're concerned about the people we design for, of course, the humans, the users, the citizens, but the people who deliver services and the people who are impacted by services, and more, the humans that make decisions about the planet, about equality and equity in the world around us and the bias that's in the world. How can we provide an equitable society? These are decisions we make, and we as service designers want people to make better decisions and use the design methods and many others, agile, lean, behavioral science, methods that help us understand things, define things, and create brilliant solutions. And then understanding the systems that we can or can't change or steer or influence in some way. As we heard last night from our three great speakers, you can't change a system, but you can change a bit of it, you can influence it, you can change the way it communicates or the tone of voice. These are the things we do in service design. That's the ethos of the course. And for a long time now, we've been looking at how we have this relationship. And on the course, we try and balance that relationship between what is possible. That could be seen as technology, it could be system, it could be organization, what is feasible, and what is viable from a business, from an economic point of view. We have to sustain our services. They have to have a value exchange of some sort. And then the impact of that needs to be desirable. It needs to be something we want. And we've always talked about how businesses are very good at viability and feasibility. And our students are brilliant at making things very desirable. And of course, we need to be there right in the middle. That's where we actually want to be. But increasingly, companies are coming to us and inviting us to have a different conversation, a different framework, one that talks about the ethics of technology, one that talks about the environmental sustainability and the impact on the planet of our economic models, and whether we need to change those, and we do, radical changes in business modeling as we think about circular economies and giving back to the earth. And finally, that the benefit of all that should be to the human and the community. It should be beneficial to all, a desirable social impact. And we need to be there. And that's what people are asking us to do on this course that is about collaboration, radical collaboration, as a student described it to me this morning, with organizations, with people who are impacted by services. It's a big ambition. It's a ridiculous ambition, but we do it again and again in our projects and in these amazing projects in this show. Now, back in January, we had our work in progress show. Maybe some of you remember that and saw the amazing opening seminar we had there with this guy, Kat Drew from the Design Museum, but also John Bird, Lord John Bird, who you may know as the founder of The Big Issue, the street magazine that sold on the streets of London and other cities as well. And John said something. He arrived at our event. We were very grateful for his organization for agreeing that he could come, and he clearly didn't really know what the RCA service design course was. And let's face it, not everybody does. They should do, but they don't. And he talked to me afterwards, and he was so engaged by what he saw in the students, the very students we're going to see today and tomorrow's conference. And he said he'd been trying to reinvent thinking because things were going wrong. People were making poor decisions. They weren't thinking straight. But he realized when he saw the work of the students that he was wrong. He needs to redesign thinking, not reinvent it. It's not about throwing thinking away. It's about redesigning it. And in a world where we've talked about design thinking for a long time, got happy and then sad with that, this concept that actually we need to redesign thinking, I think, is extremely powerful. And it's examples of that you see in the project work today. So we do need to reset the ambition of those we work with. And we need to redesign thinking to help us make better solutions to the challenges ahead. And let's face it, they are huge challenges. And as this course sets up, as we announced in January, our challenge labs around social impact, around livable planet, around healthcare, financial experiences, and the future of service design itself, we want to reset our ambition and make better decisions, and that to be a launch pad to the rest of the world to see what we can contribute. It is indeed time to reset. So welcome again to this set of events that we will be holding over the next 2 days, clustering our projects into different themes, from well-being to spaces, to commerce, to community, to the planet, to learning and workplaces. And every single project inside these themes has something important to say. Every single project tells a story. But for this first event, it's time to reset spaces. It's time to look at an incredible collection of projects that run from cycling through our cities, that run through the tourism of space, that runs through the experience of driving in autonomous vehicles, bringing art into our world in a variety of different ways, and into the very canals that run through our cities. You're going to see some of the most, I think, inspiring projects, an incredibly diverse range in this particular theme, including how organizations change and become more sustainable. So by way of a teaser, we'll be showing you a video very shortly, and you'll be running through each of the projects. And then after that, we'll be going into rooms where you can talk directly to the students. And then we'll be inviting our guest speaker, Carolyn Steele. It's the second time she's come to speak for us. You may know her books around the complexity of the world, around food, Utopia, and fantastic writing that she has done. So we're absolutely delighted that Carolyn's come back to speak again on these incredible topics that combine our students' work. So without more ado, I'm going to play you, and I'm going to stop screen sharing because I realize I need to turn my sound on, so apologies. Despite being so experienced at all of this, I forgot to check the sound was on. So here we go, share sound. Now we can share the video and you'll all be able to hear it. So please sit back and look at the videos of the projects in this theme for this opening session of the conference, Reset Spaces. Reset Spaces is a showcase for radical new ideas. Ideas of how we share our dreams through our canal system, how we will drive and react to autonomous vehicles, how we might even travel to space one day. Reset Spaces is challenging and inspiring set of projects that make us rethink our relationship with the environment.
NHBT aims to go net zero by 2040 and are responding by transforming how their estates and operations are run.
But for net zero to sustain requires behavior and culture change. We started by exploring how employees use and navigate spaces. This allowed us to understand the key touch points that drive behavior and culture in estates and design towards sustainability. To make sustainability work, it needed to be relevant and relatable to occupiers and work in an intuitive way based on how they use the space.
Presenting soft systems, we offer a 6 to 12 months pilot that helps estate teams to embed a culture of sustainability. Our unique entry point is to understand and help change occupier behaviors towards sustainable ones. We make sustainability relatable through co-creation and co-production. This empowers estates to take ownership of the pilot. To support engagement, we help them tailor communication and recognition to the different personas. Tangible assets help them reflect, support, and monitor progress. The service ends with formalizing procedures so efforts can continue.
Empower your people to be the drivers of sustainability in your organization.
Hi, I'm Natasha.
And I'm Serene, and our project Psyched is a service and community that takes new and existing residents of London on thoughtfully designed, safe and scenic rides, helping them get comfortable and confident cycling, all while cruising around the city.
As newcomers to the city, we were intimidated by cycling here. And through research conducted with people over 25 countries, we found that we weren't alone. Many people actually felt the same way, including locals themselves. So we wondered, is this barrier something we can help people overcome?
Psyched leverages on the intrigue of place exploration as a pull factor to encourage residents to get on bikes, and the assurance of a positive first experience to enable them to gain familiarity of the environment, regain cycling confidence, and overcome their psychological barrier of cycling in London.
Our long-term mission is to create a diverse cycling culture in London by enabling more people to cycle.
So if you're keen to hear more about our project, speak to us. We're psyched!
My name's Alex Burdett. I'm a student in service design at the Royal College Park. My project theme with Brompton is the city, and in particular the city from the perspective of children. If you could experience the city from the height of a 3-year-old, what would you do differently? I think it's necessary, urgent even, to the design of the city, the organisation of space, and the experience we have of moving around in it. The task of imagination infrastructuring is to provide a framework for immersion in your environment, to produce new forms of perception and possibility. Perception is sticky. It can shape the interactions of your day. Perception can allow children to discover their environment and develop situational awareness on school commutes so that they can learn about safety. That's why our service Poesis enables divergent thinking in a convergent interface to transform school commutes into interactive learning adventures.
My name is Alessandro Castorino, and I am one of the 2 team members alongside Yuxuan Yang who has worked on the development of Neonism. Neonism is an onboarding service that catalyzes the efficiency of the self-driving adoption journey and its experience for a hands-off autonomous user. It's meant to guarantee a smoother adoption journey of the autonomous system for both new and veteran users. It takes form in 2 parts. The first part is in the vehicle themselves, taking the shape of mandatory training experience gaining sessions as well as custom audio and visual cues. And the second part takes form inside the Neo official app with the purpose of connecting the wider community. All of this leads to the benefit of.
Oh, fuck. Excuse me, everybody. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry indeed. In trying to get rid of the bar that everyone can see, it has unfortunately moved the slide on. So just bear with me 1 sec. I'm going to get you back into the video, okay? And we'll try and pick up where we were. So I'm really sorry about that. Right, let's start the video again, and I'll try and fast forward. So we were just up to, we'd had Psyched, and take note of all these projects, by the way, because when you go into the breakout rooms, you can pick which of these projects you'd like to talk to. And during the 15 minutes, we'd like you to try, if you wish, to talk to maybe a couple of the projects. So you might have 7 minutes or so in one project. Let's start again with our good friend Alessandro, who I horribly cut off. I apologize about the video bar on the bottom. It doesn't seem to be removable. And that's what I was trying to do. Anyway, over to Alessandro. Let's go.
My name is Alessandro Castorino, and I am one of the 2 team members alongside Yuxuan Yang who has worked on the development of Neonism. Neonism is an onboarding service that catalyzes the efficiency of the self-driving adoption journey and its experience for a hands-off autonomous user. It's meant to guarantee a smoother adoption journey of the autonomous system for both new and veteran users. It takes form in 2 parts. The first part is in the vehicle themselves, taking the shape of mandatory training experience gaining sessions as well as custom audio and visual cues. And the second part takes form inside the Neo official app with the purpose of connecting the wider community. All of this leads to the benefit of creating a more transparent adoption journey for autonomous technology and to allow Neo to stand out as a company from its competitors in the larger market.
Julia Cameron, the author of The Artist's Way, said, "Humans are creative animals. Creative life has no ending point. Creativity nurtures our inner lives and our emotional world. At the same time, it has a positive impact on economy, society, education, and well-being. We are keen to deliver the benefit of art to the general public in this project. However, half of the adults don't go to the museum or galleries. Our initial research said people feel art is difficult, need a knowledge, it's too luxury. So how might we help citizens regain the value of art by democratizing the art in their ritual life?
Our service is a matching service between fine artworks and small public spaces. So this micro-gallery enables general public to enjoy the benefit of art, as well as make circular art from artist studios to a variety of public spaces. So we name our service the micro-gallery.
It is believed that space tourism will eventually become a thriving business, but at the moment it is unaffordable to a vast majority of people and causing heavy environmental impact. As a service designer, what can I do to make more people enjoy the benefits of this industry at its early stage? I designed a system that uses space tourism as a platform for most urgent and critical topics, using a design mechanism and 17 Sustainable Development Goals published by UN to assign the topics and funds for each mission. Space exploration was once the symbol of advancement and unity of mankind. The service provides a possibility to create a sustainable cycle between the business behavior and the greater good for the society, avoiding it merely to be an entertainment for the rich.
Okay, so there you have it. Let me stop sharing and try and get ourselves back onto Zoom. Hello, what's happened there? Sorry, 1 second. And I'll stop sharing. Thank you very much. So we're going to invite you now to go into the breakout rooms of those students to talk to them for 15 minutes, as I say. And just to give you a little reminder, you first of all, you saw Soft Systems with Linda and Riddy, who were working with an NHS organisation. Thanks for waving. An NHS organisation, but it wasn't about so much the NHS, but it was about embedding sustainability properly into an organisation with some amazing results. We saw Serene and Natasha, who were psyched and taking cycling as a device to help people assimilate into a city such as London and help them get used to safe cycling. So you can go and talk to them. We had, I've got to pronounce this right, Poesis, looking at the childhood view of traveling, replacing the journeys that we currently make by car with a more sustainable bicycle-based transportation system and seeing it from a child's eye point of view. How can you incentivize them to travel? We looked at Neonism, which looks at autonomous vehicles and the shock for a passenger to suddenly have a driverless car and how we could help that. We looked at Micro Gallery, taking art into small businesses. We looked at the incredible Canal Dream. Yeah, so you have to see the people who are waving and you'll spot them where you have to go. Canal Dream taking performers post-pandemic and improving the mental health of the public who are walking alongside the canals of London and seeing this incredible apparition of performing arts on top of a barge with Chantian. We have space tourism as well. And I'm not sure if we have nature conversations here or not. If we do, jump up and say, but it looks to me like those are the projects we have here today. And you will see when you're going to move people into breakout rooms, you will see some choices on your screen. What we would like you to do is to pick one of those choices and join them and talk to the people who created these amazing projects. I think everyone's beginning to disappear as far as I can see. So John, whoever's in the background, if you do your magic, or if there's any other instructions you want to share to help people into the right room, let me know. And we'll be right on 1 o'clock, we're right on time. Hopefully, if you click on the breakout rooms, you'll see the different projects and click on join and you'll magically transform to that project. I'll be staying here to help anybody who wants to go to a project that needs a bit of support in doing that. So open up the breakout, the 4 little squares at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and you'll see all the different projects there. Click on the one you want to go and talk to. And if you have time, you can click on that same breakout room or come back to here and we'll guide you to another project. So, John, are we closing the rooms or opening the rooms, I mean?
The rooms are open, yes.
Fantastic. So please do, for the sake of these students who spent a year in lockdown before they could come back to the college, go and give them a chat. They deserve it. And the projects are, as you can see, pretty amazing and incredibly varied. Have a look through those again. If you need a reminder of what they are, I can see that Soft Systems are on their own at the moment, and it's actually a fantastic project about how to change an organization. Alessandro is on his own in Neonism, looking at the challenges of adopting driverless cars. Everybody's in Micro Gallery. Seems a little unfair. and quite a few are in Canal Dream. And we have space tourism at the bottom as well. It doesn't look like I'm not sure if our student is in that room at the moment. So maybe pick one of the other ones.
Is anybody that's still in this main room, is anybody here in need of a little bit of further instruction on how to get into the breakout rooms?
You don't have to ask a question. If you just click on join, just listen to the conversation. But if you do have any questions, that would be great. And a reminder that, of course, these students are showing currently in Kensington. So they spent the last few days and the weekend standing by their shows, talking to people coming and going. A lot of them are getting jobs, I'm delighted to say. There's a huge demand for service design at the moment. So do just take the chance to click on a project, especially if you see somebody in your breakout rooms, perhaps doesn't have anybody in there. Thank you. We're getting a few of them filled up now. Thank you very much. Again, if anyone needs a hand, but do these marvelous students a favour and just go and say hello. That would mean the world to them. So if you fancy just clicking on a join, or if you need us to help you into the room, we can do that. And for those of you on watching on live stream in YouTube, you can fast forward this bit. We're currently at 1:03, and we're going to give them another 12. Thank you. I think if I pause the YouTube, then it'll get disconnected. So we'll keep it on and we'll edit it out for those people who aren't. We're back on. Thank you. There's only a few of you left now. If anyone wants to go and talk to join room 4, for example, Lord Alessandro's on his own. It's a fascinating project and a lovely setup they put up at the college here to mimic what happens when you're driving an autonomous vehicle and suddenly it takes over. And the warning signs, they created a whole new language of sounds to help you understand what the car is doing. So do drop in on any of these teams and have a little chat with them. We'd really appreciate it. I'll just go and drop in on Alessandro just to keep him company, and I'll be back here very shortly. Just a reminder, if anybody hasn't yet had a chance to speak to any students, do pop in and say hello to them. They'd really appreciate it. A couple of teams haven't had so many people come through, though some have had a lot, which is great. So appreciate that. But poor old Alessandro still wants to show his autonomous vehicles off. But if you get anyone here, just want to have a quick chat to students, say hi, they would massively appreciate it. Thank you. Hello, Alessandro. John, are we bringing people back?
The breakout rooms are going to be automatically closed in 50 seconds. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, that's great. Let me get the right presentation back then. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. You've had your 15 minutes of chatting to students. Thank you very much. I saw some of the rooms are absolutely bulging. And poor old Alessandro, all he got was me. So apologies, Alessandro, but I hope you enjoyed that. It's a tiny snapshot of the experience you would have face-to-face, of course. And we're living in somewhat of a hybrid world at the moment, of course. But at least it allows you, from wherever you are in the world, to talk to our students and hear a little bit about what they're about. So let me just share my screen again, and hopefully you can all see a nice photograph of our speaker now. And we're delighted, as I said, to have Carolyn Steele join us again. She spoke a couple of years ago. Carolyn is a leading thinker on food and cities. Her first book, award-winning book, Hungry City, How Food Shapes Our Lives, and the more recent book that we talked about 2 years ago, Citopia, How Food Can Save the World. Her idea of food and place coming together internationally suits our themes so well. She's a director of the Kilburn Nightingale Architects and has been a visiting lecturer at many universities, including Cambridge, London Met, Slow Food and the London School of Economics. She's in worldwide demand as a speaker. She certainly is. And you can see her 2009 TED Global Talk on her own website and of course on the TED website. So I'm really delighted, Carolyn. I hope you're there. Let me stop sharing. And there you are.
I'm here, but I'm muted, but now I'm unmuted. So
now you're not. That's good. I'm sure perhaps one of our team can do clever things like spotlight you for the next session. But we're going to hand over to you. We'd love you to speak for about 15 minutes or so. Sure. There should be a bit of time for a bit of Q&A after that. So welcome, Carolyn. Welcome back to RCA Service Design. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Clive. And it's been a very interesting and stimulating kind of 40 minutes or so, just learning a bit about the students' work and hearing, you know, what your program's about, which I think is really important and very lovely to hear about. And I just dropped into a couple of the breakout rooms, soft systems and site, and there are just so many ideas about, you know, inclusivity and making people, sort of enabling people to sort of do behaviors that they keep getting told from above, but actually allowing them to co-create the sort of circumstances in which that can come about, and engaging with people's latent creativity and, you know, our ability to make. So it's been really fantastic to hear about that. And I mean, 15 minutes is going to go like this again, as it just did, but I'm just going to share my screen. I've put together a few thoughts about, as you kindly said in your introduction, the sort of relationship between food and place, and really how we use, actually it's much better just having all the slides like that, then you can just you can see how many there are, always too many. But anyway, just very briefly to sort of say how food has shaped our world and how we can use it. And I thought, you know, so many of the things that you said resonated about systems thinking, because, you know, for me, food is the ultimate systems thinking tool, because, you know, we literally sort of create our sense of home through food, and we modify the landscape through it as well. And I'm just going to do an absolutely whirlwind tour of how that works. This is me with the book that you kindly mentioned, Citopia, I'll explain why it's called that, and also why the subtitle is How Food Can Save the World. Essentially, Sitopia is just a way of looking at the world through the lens of food, and it's a word I invented about 15 years ago. It's from the Greek word sitos for food and topos for place. And I did this because I'd been researching what it took to feed a city, and really realized that essentially everything in our world is shaped by food, and therefore it makes an incredibly powerful tool through which to not only sort of see the world and understand the world in a connected way, but also ask all the big questions that really matter. And of course, the biggest one of all, which is shared by all living creatures, really is the question of how to eat. And we really evolved as an intelligent species by getting better at answering this question. And obviously, again, you mentioned technology in your introduction, and of course, arguably the most powerful technology of all that we probably acquired as a species about 1.5 million years ago is the learning how to control fire. And that not only allowed us to modify the landscape by sort of selectively burning areas to encourage herding animals to come closer to us, but also, of course, to cook our food. And, I don't think I know of a more powerful image about how we establish ourselves in a place than this one, because of course, by lighting a fire and sitting around it and sharing a meal, we establish home, home and hearth, and that remains something fundamental to us, our need to be part of the community, to feel included, as so many of the students have just been saying, and part of a bigger picture, and also our ability to collaborate, I think, evolved through this shared problem of how to eat. And of course, for most of history, and here you have a brilliant image of how actually Aboriginal Australians used fire to modify the landscape and help them to hunt. So this idea that it's only through farming that we've been modifying landscape is actually not true. We were doing it for tens of thousands of years, but earlier than that. And of course, it is by modifying the landscape that you make home in it. So I think there's always that question of, what it takes to sort of establish ourselves in place. Of course, for the last 12,000 years or so, we've been farming, and that's a very different way of being in a space, because you invest a lot more work in the land, not only just burning selective bits, but actually planting crops, saving crops, and so on. And to a certain extent, you could say sort of establishing a symbiotic relationship with the plants and the animals that we eat, and creating a very managed and artificial landscape in a certain sense, but also one that really binds us very, very specifically to a place, because of course, if you've planted crops, you can't just wander off as hunter-gatherers might do, who are just following animals through the landscape. And I just love the variety that you can find around the world of ways that we've found of living well in a place by learning how to feed ourselves in those places. And the variety, as I say, is astonishing. You've got many examples. I'm just showing, the Inuit top right, who of course are hunter-gatherers and live mostly on sea animals. Top left, you've got the farmers of the Alps, and the idea of common land where the cows are brought up in the summer to graze and then brought down in the winter to live in sheds. You've got herders, bottom left, the Maasai, who live mostly on the blood and milk of their cattle, or bottom right, obviously an example of farming, in this case of wine. And of course, the whole idea of terroir comes from the wine industry, and the idea that, you perfect the art of living in a very, very specific place and extracting maximum taste out of it. But of course, maximum taste is also about pleasure, and it's also about nutrition. So, this is really how we've established ourselves in various parts of the world. Of course, when we started building cities, it all got far more complicated. This is one of the first cities ever built in ancient Mesopotamia, modern Iraq. And it just shows you a sort of what I call the urban paradox. So the urban paradox is that once you start living in cities, obviously you're sort of not living directly in the land anymore. And so you have this question of how you're going to feed yourself. And of course, there is this kind of mutual history of cities and countryside. And this is what I call the fried egg urban model. So you have a sort of, if you like, the yolk of the fried egg is the city surrounded by countryside. And that was a very, very common model in the pre-industrial world. You know, and this is really, you know, the most beautiful image I know that explains that fundamental relationship that is central to all urban civilization of city and country. But also, you know, food shaped the city itself. So this is an image of the Athenian agora. I mean, if you want to talk about making space or place, I think this for me is the ultimate example, because the agora, of course, was the Athenian food market. So it's where the countryside came to the town, but it was also where people came, you know, gathered in order to discuss politics and, you know, philosophy. Socrates used to hang out by the fish sellers, and actually citizens gathered here to vote as well. So you have the ultimate public space. It's about food, it's about socializing, but it's also about politics and the running of the city. And that really is the sort of the gold standard, as it were, for me, of public space. And of course, society itself depends on this idea of public space, certainly if you want something like a democracy. Of course, food also brought chaos to the city, livestock, you know, animals walking into the city before they were slaughtered. And this is London's Smithfield Market, its main meat market in the early 19th century. And as you can see, it's what I call necessary chaos. So, I mean, again, going back to your sort of thing of who does the organizing and so on, I think with food, it's always a fascinating combination of top-down organizations, obviously the creation of a space in which animals can be bought and sold, but also kind of chaos, or, you know, just a sort of anyone does it, lots and lots of herders and sellers and farmers all kind of coming together and doing what is necessary. So it has a kind of self-organizing quality about it as well, which I find really interesting. I mean, I'm really ripping through insane amounts of history very rapidly just to give you an overview of why I think food is such a powerful lens for talking about these kinds of issues. Of course, the railways come, that's really the end of geography. You know, cities now can grow much bigger than they did before. They're no longer constrained by the difficulty of getting food in. Politicians start to lose their control over the food because it's all going to be dealt with by industries. And of course, food also starts to become invisible, because instead of animals walking into the city visibly, they're now going to be slaughtered outside the city and come in as dead meat. So profound changes that really shape the world we live in today. This is a very sort of easy way of just seeing London's growth after the railways and understanding how urban sprawl came, you know, from the moment the railways arrived. The transformation of the productive hinterland. So going back to that Lorenzetti that I didn't even name his, you know, the allegory, the effects of good government, I briefly showed you of the city of Siena and its city and countryside together. That kind of relationship is now broken because the railways open up the new world. And, you know, for the first time ever, it's possible to produce more grain than humans can eat. And of course, the transformation of a natural grassland grazed by bison and inhabited by Native Americans, so hunter-gatherers, to this farmed land, and then the creation, the invention, if you like, of cheap meat because the grain is fed to the animals, which is an ecological catastrophe. And then following the railways, the cars, and even greater spread, you know, the creation of suburbs like the one top left that nobody in their right minds would try and walk around. So instead of going to a physical market and meeting people, as in the Athenian agora, they're driving to air-conditioned boxes outside the city, which are very artificial and, of course, totally commercial spaces. So this is not public space, this is commercial space. And you have to behave in a certain way. And of course, food itself is denatured at the same time to withstand the logistical craziness it has to undergo. And this is really where we are today. You know, we are more than half of the global population now live in cities, and our food comes from denatured landscapes we don't see out of our window anymore. And of course, as we know, you know, farming is now becoming arguably the greatest sort of ecological catastrophe in our lives. And of course, we don't have that sort of primary engagement with food either. Often we just dial up, you know, dinner on our phones. It arrives as if on a magic carpet. So we have this profound disconnection with food and everything it represents. We've created a society predicated on cheap food, but actually cheap food doesn't exist. And if you think that food consists of living things that we kill so we can live, and you realize therefore food is life, you realize there could be no such thing as cheap food. So all the externalities from climate change, pollution, water depletion, diet-related disease, and so on. And of course, you know, the Ukraine war just highlights the kind of the fragility of the system we've created and the fact that it's actually not robust at all. But all the power now is in the corporations who want to, you know, get the world eating their branded products, which of course we're now discovering is very bad for our health. Now, again, coming back to the technology question, as you said at the beginning, this is probably my favorite quote in relation to technology, the wonderful Cedric Price. He said, "Technology is the answer, but what was the question?" And of course, the question is the old question: how to eat, how to live, how to create sort of sustainable and equitable communities. And of course, it's the old utopian question. And what I found really interesting when I was studying utopia is that it's all about how to feed a city. It's all about actually how do you balance that relationship between the city and the countryside. And this is in fact why I invented this word Citopia, because it's kind of an alternative to utopia, which is our greatest tradition of thinking in a multidisciplinary way about how we should live. But actually utopia aims at perfection and therefore can't exist. Whereas we already live in a food place, a world shaped by food. We just live in a bad one because we don't value food. So the key to creating a better Citopia is obviously to value food again. We've come a long way. You come from the control of fire to farming, to the use of fossil fuels, and now, of course, to lab meat and so on. We've been living in the landscape, then living in farms, then living in cities. And now the question is, how do we feed the cities of the future? And in terms of what we do, we've gone from just living, you know, working, not really being a concept, because basically just being in the landscape and pulling food off trees is sort of what you do, to a crafts-based economy, to now a sort of much more technological economy. But the question is, what are we all going to do when the machines take over? So the whole question of how we're going to live in the future is a huge one that you can ask through the lens of food. But also you can look at the journey of food through our lives at every stage and sort of say, well, which of these, you know, cows eating grass, which is why we co-evolve with cows, or being fed grain, which makes them sick, and we could eat the grain ourselves, food animating urban spaces, or leaving the city in the name of efficiency, or dialing up food on your phone, taking time for food, or just being too busy to eat. Which of these actually makes us happier, and which is actually giving us a better life? So it's turning the whole how do we feed the world question upside down, and actually saying what is a good life in the 21st century, and then how can we eat and arrange our inhabitation of the land better to achieve that aim. So food for me, as I said at the beginning, really is the ultimate systems thinking tool, because in a bowl of food in front of you, like a bowl of soup, there is the universe. It's just, you know, all of the world is in that plate. And the idea of sharing and connection, love and nurturing, you know, the space of the home, the space of the economy, where the food comes from, you know, the way that sits in the city, but the city sits in the countryside, and that's all a dynamic interaction as well. And of course, it's all nature. Even we are nature, and food is nature. So we're all part of this greater whole, and it's all on a big planet whizzing through the universe, giving us day and night and seasons and so on. So from the food to the universe is really the sort of the enormous span of, and the power of thinking through food. And that's the structure of my book, Citopia, as well. It's about seeing the world through the lens of food, and understanding that because food is our most valuable thing in the world that we have to actually collaborate to produce, by valuing food, we can create something pretty close to utopia, which is a good Citopia. And there's far more in those two books, as you kindly mentioned at the beginning.
Thank you so much, Carolyn Steele. Round of applause. Fantastic. You did it in 15 minutes. That was pretty awesome.
You know, I didn't even have a clock running. I just thought, just keep changing the slides and just talk very, very fast.
Fantastic. So listen, now we have a little bit of time set aside for Q&A. And, you know, Q&A can come from any source, from students or from the audience. If you have a question and you want to drop it into the chat, please do, anybody. But I'd immediately ask, does anyone have any questions for Carolyn, or does Carolyn have any questions for students? Who wants to go first before I magically think of one? Perhaps I'll ask whilst we're waiting. Sorry, go ahead, Carolyn.
No, I was going to say, ask the students. I mean, I've just shown a lot of images, some of which are quite scary, to be honest. And, you know, I think my generation, we grew up, you know, in the age of the Cold War and expecting Russian nuclear kind of missiles to land on our heads, and weirdly we're back there again. You know, there's this kind of, but now we also have climate change and biodiversity loss and so on. I mean, I guess what I want to ask the students is, I mean, for me, you're doing incredibly important work, because you're asking the question of how can we arrange things better? And, you know, it really is about those kinds of interactions, as Clive said at the beginning, you know, that sort of allow us to work better together, you know. And I guess I'd like to ask, you know, all the students really, you know, how do you maintain your sense of positivity and optimism? And is there anything you would like my generation to do? Because, you know, we've kind of, how can we help you to sort of arrive at this vision of a better, more sustainable, equitable world?
What a, excuse me, fantastic question. Anyone want to have a go at that? Come on, students, this is your chance. This is your chance. Where do you get your positivism from? Surely, anyone?
One of the questions I would like to ask is sort of, especially this generational sort of like knowledge about food. I think for us, like we grew up with like fast food, like that's what we enjoyed eating, and then we kind of like shift into health food. But I always feel like there's some knowledge that we're losing. So I guess it's sort of like, what kind of question should we be asking? Sort of like the generations that came before us. So we can also build up this knowledge as well and look after it. Because I think sometimes by generations, our knowledge actually gets lost.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I often say I'm really glad I grew up in the analog world, because, you know, if my computer stops working, I can pick up a telephone, or I can use a pencil to write. You know, there's a fallback position. And I think weirdly, I mean, I often say, you know, we're entering a kind of neo-geographical age. And interestingly, you know, Patrick Geddes, I mean, you don't need to know who he is, but he's a very interesting guy. He talked about entering the neo-technical age, you know, when sort of in a way, more technology weirdly allows you to start going back to a more direct, simple life. And that's exactly what you're doing in your project, where you're sort of saying, we've forgotten the human in all of this, you know, and actually people are smart and they're creative and we like making stuff. And I mean, that's part of my vision of the world I knew before computers, is that actually the more we do ourselves, the happier we are and the more effective we become. So, I mean, my big message from the analog age is that actually learning to work with your hands, learning to think, you know, just think for yourself. And it's exactly the quote that Clive said of John Bird, saying, you know, it's actually redesigning thinking, but people have to be doing the thinking, you know. And actually, when I was writing my books, people sort of said to me, why are you doing this? What's your goal? And I said, I want to give people the tools with which they can think, to help them think. Because what food does is it allows you to address the really big questions, like what is a good life? How do we exist together on a shrinking planet? You know, sort of what makes us happy, and how can we use technology to serve these aims, rather than just say, oh, technology is wonderful, hurrah, let's just do whatever it allows us to do. So I think it's really focusing on the simple things like a question of how to eat, which we are programmed to get incredible amounts of pleasure out of. And this is Epicurus's great insight, that you actually, if you take pleasure in the necessary, everything else follows. You know, my vision of a good life, you know, a good society is one in which everyone can eat well. Because if you get that right, and it seems like such a simple thing, it's not, everything else falls into place because it's fundamental. And of course, you know, engaging in it, as we saw under lockdown, people started doing things like baking their own bread again and kind of going, actually, why didn't I do this before? It's kind of, it's really rewarding and I can do it. And then you start existing on a completely different level, where you're a producer and a contributor and a collaborator and a thinker and a maker and a creator, and not just a consumer. So, you know, that I think absolutely, as you say, the opportunity now that we have to use technology to allow us to rediscover our inner creativity and agency is really important.
Fantastic, thank you. That was a wonderful question and a wonderful answer. Thank you. We have a question from Audiovisual, not quite sure which student that is, who wants to ask, what are the top 3 things we as a generation should be doing to move into Sitopia?
Oh, brilliant question. So one, value food. You know, I mean, if you just think about what food is, you know, as I said in my very, very rapid talk, you know, it consists of living things. You know, so plants are living, animals are living, fish are living, birds are living, whatever it is we eat, it's living things. Even, you know, microbes. So even if you're doing precision fermentation, microbes are still living things. So it's living things that we either breed or just hunt and then kill so we can live. So it's as precious as life itself, basically. So that's thing one. Thing two, sort of find out about your local food environment. I mean, think, you know, when you're buying food or when you're sort of, I mean, of course, you know, wonderfully if you can actually start making it yourself, but get as close as you can to the sort of, you know, the source of actually where did this stuff come from? If you think about my soup to the universe diagram, the point is that, you know, in your bowl of soup or noodles or porridge or whatever it is, you know, that is a sort of emissary from a landscape, you know, and people will have been involved. They will have grown the food, you know, the landscape itself will have been modified. You know, was it grown sustainably or not? You know, were people paid enough? You know, did it, how many air miles did it chew up? How much carbon did it use on its way to your plate? And the more you can sort of just, I mean, by the way, this is the positive thing, is that this isn't just about, and lots of your projects reflect this as well, it's not just about doing the right thing because we're all going to die if we don't. It's actually about pleasure as well, because the more you find out about food and the more you get to know the people who actually make it. So for example, find out if you've got a local farmers market, or buy directly from the farmer, or even join a CSA, which is a community supported agriculture farm. You can actually go and work on the farm with the farmer, which is actually really fun. Farmers are generally wonderful people, I find, because they're real. And the third thing is actually, you know, sort of whenever you spend money, you know, I mean, think about put it to the best cause that you possibly can. You know, so, you know, if you've got a certain amount of money to spend on food, think about, you know, how can I use that sort of economic power that I have in the most positive way? And the more you get to know your growers and get to know sort of what's good and what's bad, what's seasonal, what's local, and so on, the more you're actually, by eating, you're actually creating a better Sitopia. But as I say, I think engagement is probably the thing that covers all of this, you know, caring, understanding, knowing, becoming what Carlo Petrini, who's the founder of Slow Food, he calls a co-producer. So not just a consumer of food, but someone who, like the co-creators that several of you, which are like the Soft Systems projects explicitly addressed, and I'm sure others of you do as well, become a co-producer of food, you know, by either growing your own, cooking for your friends, you know, sort of getting to know the people who produce your food. And it's all about pleasure in the end. That's what's so wonderful about it. You know, once you start valuing it. And by the way, you don't have to spend more money. This is the really weird thing as well, because if you make your own bread, for example, yeah, it takes time, but you can decide that that's what you're going to do for fun. And then honestly, if you serve people food that you've made yourself or even grown yourself, it gives you a level of pleasure that nothing else I know in the world does. It's primary act of creation, and working with, you know, growing plants from seed and actually seeing the wonder of a plant that knows how to grow, even if you don't know much about farming or growing, it's just an extraordinary thing. And then you become an advocate. You become an advocate for food or Sitopia. You become a Sitopian.
I love that. I think we all want to become Sitopians. We're pretty much up on time. I don't know if any, there's probably time for one last question, but if no one's got it, that's absolutely fine. I think it's just remains for me to say a huge thank you to Karen Steele again. Another round of applause, please, in this virtual space.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And some lovely questions and answers there. Really, really enjoyed that. And thank you for your inspirational speech.
It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the inspirational projects as well. And you know, what you're doing is really important. So, you know, thank you for doing that. And, you know, I mean, Sitopia is just another way of saying a better world, you know, and all the stuff that matters. And you're all working towards that. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. That's wonderful. And I'm quite sure we'll ask you back again, if you don't mind. Let me just remind everybody, if I share my screen, the last few moments here, we have a fabulous website, which is a very easy to remember URL, rcaservicedesign.com. You can see all the work of all 43 projects and the 7 or 8 we've looked at in Reset Spaces today. We have another event, 2 other events today coming up on community with Dan Hill and well-being with Alex Barkley. So keep a lookout for those over the next few hours, and we'll be recording those and live streaming those as well, I hope. But you can, of course, see all the events right back through the bad old days of COVID as well. And the 2 online shows we've had on our RCA Service Design YouTube channel, including last night's opening seminar with Luke and Hannah and Lou Down. And of course, we have lots of social media. There you can see on our Instagram account a picture of us all celebrating the convocation on Monday. All the students who are now graduates, hooray. So give them a job and we'll all be done. The world will be better. And of course, our Twitter as well, where we share our words of wisdom and amazing speakers actually that come and take part in this. So let me just stop sharing one final time. Thank everybody for joining us. It's almost the most joyous, wonderful time of the year, and also quite exhausting time of the year of the show, and seeing this cohort of 2022 go out into the world. There are some amazing projects across the whole cohort. We hope you've enjoyed this first little set of themes as we reset spaces today, and look forward to resetting community and well-being later on this afternoon, and another session on tomorrow with the 4 other topics that we'll have during the day, some of them combined, including commerce and the planet. And I've forgotten the last one, but there you go. And of course, if you're anywhere near Kensington, come and see the students. We're open until late tonight and tomorrow night. And I think tomorrow night will be quite a party, as that will be the end of the show. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, students, for being amazing. Thank you, Carolyn, for being amazing. And thanks for joining us. And we'll see you again a bit later today or next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Clive.
I was on mute. A few people here. Can we?
Yes, just working on that now.
So did the YouTube get turned off, or was it okay to the end?
It was okay to the end, I think.
Yeah, okay, good. I just couldn't see it, but I'm not the host anymore, am I? That's probably why I didn't see it anymore. Cool.
Just.
Right, well done. Hello.
Hi, I'll see you guys later. Thank you
very much, Jiyoung.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Okay.
That seemed to go okay, apart from the screen, trying to stop the bar on the screen. I remember that from last time. I just don't know why it does that. It's really annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what player are you using?
Well, it's just I just download the video into the deck, into the keynote.
Oh, it's in the deck. Okay,
it's in
right.
the deck. It's embedded in the deck. So I have a funny feeling that if you don't put your mouse over it, it doesn't appear. But the minute you move your mouse, it appears. So it's a weird one, isn't it? Shall I try it again now?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's play around.
I'm thinking about it. The panel is going to start in 10 minutes. So
really sorry.
One of us has to start that link.
Have you got that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I can do that. Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just
yeah. Now what I've done is sorry. Oh, let me stop sharing and find it. Okay. So just quickly try this out.